Hi everyone, welcome to the Education Hour. I'm your host Shaleeka Jayalath. Last week we took a look at apartheid, South Africa's system of legalized racial discrimination that existed until 1994 when Nelson Mandela became the country's first non-white head of state. This week we take a look at another world leader, Mahatma Gandhi, who, like Mandela, appears to have been imbibed with the South African deterministic spirit. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was born in the state of Gujarat, India in 1869. When he was 13, his family arranged his marriage to Kasturba, with whom Gandhi had 4 sons. At the age of 18, Gandhi went to London to train as a barrister. He is known during his London days to have had stage fright when speaking in court, but also to have taken up ballroom dancing. Gandhi returned to India in 1891. 2 years later, he accepted a 1-year contract at an Indian law firm in South Africa, which turned out to be the turning point in his life. He was refused admission to hotels, beaten up when he refused to give up his seat to a white man on a stagecoach, and thrown off a train when he refused to move to a third-class compartment after he had paid for a first-class ticket. Gandhi described the latter experience as his moment of truth. From then on, he decided to fight injustice and defend his rights as an Indian and a man. When his contract expired, he decided to remain in South Africa and launch a campaign to enable Indians living in South Africa to gain the right to vote. He formed the Natal Indian Congress and drew international attention to the plight of Indians in South Africa. In 1906, the Transvaal government sought to further restrict the rights of Indians, and Gandhi organized his first campaign of satyagraha, or mass civil disobedience. Gandhi said, "There are many causes that I am prepared to die for, but no causes that I am prepared to kill for." He developed a new non-violent way to make things right by getting lots of people to disobey unfair laws and be uncooperative. Over the next 7 years, Gandhi led a campaign of nonviolent resistance to laws which were unfair to colored people. During this time, thousands of Indians, including Gandhi, were flogged or jailed or were shot for striking or burning their registration cards. Eventually, the government was forced to seek a compromise with Gandhi, and when he left South Africa, conditions for Indians had greatly improved. Gandhi's Satyagraha campaign greatly inspired Mandela, who recognized it as being a compelling act of passive protest against oppression. Gandhi's Satyagraha campaign also inspired the formation of the African National Congress and strengthened Mandela's belief in our shared humanity. Interestingly, these two world leaders never met but were companions in their struggles nevertheless. Both resisted racism at the cost of their personal freedom. Both attempted to walk the talk, leading by example, and both lived by universalist ethics and ideals, leaving behind legacies of peace and conflict resolution that have cemented their status as world icons. Mandela has spoken of Gandhi as being his role model and inspiration to lead South Africa to independence, and has himself been referred to as the Gandhi of South Africa. But ironically, it is South Africa that stirred Gandhi to fight oppression. In 1914, Gandhi returned to India and lived a life of abstinence and spirituality on the periphery of Indian politics. He spun his own yarn and made his own cloth. He encouraged others to do the same instead of buying imported British material. Gandhi quickly became a leader within the Indian National Congress, a growing political party supporting independence, and travelled widely with the party to learn about the local struggles of various Indian communities. It was during those travels that his legend grew among the Indian people. Finding extreme poverty and famine in his own Gujarat province, Gandhi led an initiative to clean up the area and install new schools and build hospitals. He was ultimately arrested by British appointed landlords for causing unrest, but talked his way out of jail and negotiated better conditions for the Indian farmers. When news about this sneaky feat spread through India, he earned the nickname Bapu, meaning father. Gandhi supported Britain during the First World War, but in 1919 launched a new satyagraha in protest of British rule in India. 10,000 unarmed Indians attended a protest meeting in Amritsar. Without warning, British soldiers fired on the crowd, killing nearly 400 people and wounding over a further 1,000. People were shocked by this atrocity and many more joined Gandhi's campaign. By 1920, he was leader of the Indian movement for independence. Always nonviolent, he asserted the unity of all people under one God and preached Christian and Muslim ethics along with the Hindu teachings. The British authorities jailed him several times, but his following was so great that he was always released. Meanwhile, the British rulers continued to collect heavy taxes from the people, which kept them in poverty. In 1930, Gandhi led a 390-kilometer march to the Arabian Sea as a protest against the tax on salt. Thousands joined him in making salt of their own. Over 60,000 people were arrested. However, the British government was forced to negotiate with Gandhi, and they agreed to release political prisoners if he stopped the campaign of non-cooperation. He was named Man of the Year in 1930 by Time magazine for this feat. Imprisoned for a year because of the Salt March, he became more influential than ever. He protested discrimination against the untouchables, India's lowest caste, and negotiated unsuccessfully for Indian home rule. Undeterred, he began the Quit India movement, a campaign to get Britain to voluntarily withdraw from India during World War II. Britain refused and arrested him yet again. Huge demonstrations ensued, and despite the arrests of 100,000 Home Rule advocates by British authorities, the balance finally tipped towards Indian independence. During the Second World War, Gandhi and his followers made it clear that they would not support Britain unless India was granted independence. In 1942, Gandhi was arrested and imprisoned for 2 years by the British. Following World War II, Gandhi was a leading figure in the negotiations that led to India's independence on 15th August 1947. Gandhi's campaign had weakened the British government's hold on the country, but with the promised independence date approaching, killings and riots raged between Hindus and Muslims who hoped to take control of the Indian government. It was decided to divide India into two separate countries, India and Pakistan. Gandhi was strongly opposed to this idea but was forced to agree because of the threat of civil war. The violence continued. Gandhi's appeals for calm were ignored, so he began another fast. Only when the Hindu, Sikh and Muslim leaders promised to renounce violence did he agree to take a sip of orange juice. A few days later, on January 30th, 1948, on his way to a prayer meeting in Delhi, Gandhi was shot by a Hindu fanatic who objected to Gandhi's acceptance of Muslims. Over 1.5 million people marched in his massive funeral procession. Known as Mahatma or the Great Soul during his lifetime, Gandhi is often referred to as the father of the nation in India. Gandhi's persuasive methods of civil disobedience influenced leaders of civil rights movements around the world, such as Nelson Mandela, as we have already discussed, and Martin Luther King Jr. in the United States. More than anything else, Gandhi proved that one man has the power to take on an empire using both ethics and intelligence. Thank you for tuning in. Join me next week for the final episode in this series of the Education Hour, when we look at the role of music in the fight against apartheid. This is Shaleeka Jayalath. Stay safe.